Ready? We will call to order the regular board meeting and organizational meeting of the Chicago Board of Election Commissioners. Good morning. My name is Marisel Hernandez. I'm the chair. Seated to my right is Commissioner Kresse, and to my left is Commissioner Jonathan Swain. The next item on the agenda is the consideration of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes? If not, we will proceed with the organization and the election of the chairperson of the board. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we elect re-elect you as chairperson of this board.
Can I call you back?
Is there a second?
And I am proud to second that motion.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The next item is the election of the secretary.
Madam Chair, I move that we elect Bill Kresse as secretary of this board.
I second that. All those in favor, and I will vote this time. Aye.
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 Great, congratulations.
Thank you.
And the next item is the adoption of the bylaws, and I believe they're the exact, is that right, Ms. Goodman?
There were no substantive changes. There were changes in the wording from chairperson to chair.
Right. Okay, and they're in the packet. Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve or adopt?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is adopted. Now we will proceed with the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of January 14, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the highly anticipated executive director's report. Mr. Brown.
Anything new, Lance?
You busy?
There's something when you've been at a location too long, you get out. I should have gotten out a long time ago. Never anticipated this happening. To my board members, my report will be quick. I have some handouts for you. First of all, we had last weekend, we had our pretrial detainees vote at the jail. I'm proud to say there were some minor bumps, but it went very well. 1,570 inmates that voted, pretrial detainees, that's what I'm thinking, had voted, and it went real well. And it was the sheriff, people at the jail were very excited about it. It was a big success, and I'm very proud that we were able to be part of it. So
How does that number compare to absentees from that same population in previous elections?
March of 2016, it was 701, and April of 2019 is 434.
So we significantly increased.
Yes, 1,570.
Participation.
Plus, we have this coming weekend also.
So we've significantly increased participation of those in that population.
Yes, we
One.
That's great.
If I may, I was there and observed it, and I was, very impressed with the cooperation between the various agencies in putting this together. And again, I think the operation gives it greater ballot security, a greater integrity of the vote, and I just like seeing the reaction of some of the detainees that, they are, the dignity that we give them in being able to cast a ballot like that. So I applaud everyone was there, including Director Jackson. So, thank you.
Another item for my board members is I had a conference. Well, first of all, we had a meeting with the Office of Emergency Management with the city on March 5th, and we're still working with them. And those are materials. We're still working with them. We'll be doing a weekly, an everyday update with them, just for your information. The other item is that I had a conference call with the standard board members from the EAC and with the different states around the United States and talking about what we're going to do for this election. And it's really surprising that a lot of agencies around, around the country do not have supplies. I just want to let you know, this is what we supply in our early voting sites. We have enough hand sanitizers, we have wipes, we have, Miss Walls was able to get enough. In fact, I think she's the part that kind of wiped out a lot of the shelves around the city, but we have hand sanitizers at every single precinct, and it's inside the supply box, the gray supply box. And we have supplies that are set out in the early voting sites, and Ms. Walls deserves it. And I told her we were gonna need this a couple of months ago. She ended up wiping everybody out, so
Well,
I
thank
appreciate that.
Thank you, Opal,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
for your ingenuity and,
Miss-
persistence. Thank you.
But
Miss Casco 2020.
But just to let you know, what the meeting was, the conference call with everybody around the United States is, we're all in the same pickle. They're having the same problems. And I'm happy that this agency has enough talent that I think we will get through this, and it'll be, it won't be pretty, but it'll get done. So I just wanted to let the board members know that. Other items is that we have, right now, 21 vacancies, and we're getting more every day. In fact, the city has asked us to keep track of the vacancies and the reason why.
These are polling place.
Polling place vacancies and the refusals. And I have a report that I did not make enough copies, but I will get that to you later. I'll send that to you. That we're getting a lot is because of people are scared of the virus.
Well, the fear of the virus is what is getting the refusals of
Yes.
landlords to allow us to the polling place.
And
Of this list is not indicated here, I'm going to presume these are not municipal buildings. These
No,
are private locations.
these are all private
Are they
locations.
what, businesses, and what is the gamut of what?
Everything, apartment buildings, condo buildings, business locations.
Okay.
And if you look on the second page, it also has senior homes and assisted living. So, but if you look, there are 2 other apartment buildings located right underneath that.
Yeah.
These are high-end apartment buildings that just don't want us in there. So we are losing polling places. Brandon is working hard to take care of those, to try to fill everything, but this is going to be hard. So we're going to do some creative measures. The governor's office suggested about splitting precincts, making sure that, well, you let the seniors vote in the senior homes and then everybody else has to go someplace else. We're having a hard time finding where that someplace else is going to be. Some of it may be possibly a mile or 2 away. This is something that I've said in the past, and I'm going to say it again, and I'll just say it this last time. We need vote centers, and we need to expand on vote by mail.
Well,
These are 2 things that we're going to have done if this happens again.
I think we need to stress that fact even before Election Day, whenever we have the opportunity, and then after Election Day, I think that we have to do a big push for legislation for vote centers. I think this is this is a turning point.
Well, yeah, this, everybody I've talked to, elected officials calling me up, have all agreed, saying, well, if we had vote centers, we wouldn't be in this pickle.
Right.
So it's something that we need to work on that right after this election.
Mm-hmm.
Another item that we need
I
to,
have another question.
yes, sir.
So, of these vacancies that you have that people are saying requested not to be in polling place due to Has that request, are those requests slowed down or they increased?
This was just started as soon as the announcement was made the other day. That's when the phone call started happening. And we're still getting them right now. In fact, we're starting to get private schools calling us.
And the governor declared essentially a state of emergency, a disaster declaration late yesterday, and
And that's
I
when
think this could only prompt more of these, so we desperately need to get the public to know, early vote or vote by mail. Because even with our best efforts, there are gonna be problems come election day. Would that be fair to
I
say?
agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that needs to be a clarion call of the day. My question though is, what happens if the number of polling places that the call saying we're refusing starts going higher than the number of polling places we perform? What happens in that scenario? What happens legally in that scenario? And what are I'm just concerned, I'm concerned about questions of disenfranchisement. I'm concerned about questions of, fairness across, all, you get what I'm saying.
I understand.
Because if you got a place where you don't have, 3 polling places for three precincts, I don't know what that means legally, I don't know. That's the question I guess I'm asking.
And I don't have a total answer for you yet.
That's
We're
fair.
working
That's
on
fair.
it right
That's fair.
now, but I will.
Okay.
And the staff staff understands what the problem is, and they're really putting together some ideas that we're going to flush out. We had a meeting early this morning, and we didn't get to finish it, but we hopefully get an answer. So we're working on that. The other item is I want to let you know that.
Have we get, look, this is a, I'm gonna ask a question, and because of the nature of the situation, which is extremely unique, right?
Yes.
So unique situations require unique responses. Have we given consideration in some of these places to creating spaces for a polling place? For example, getting a tent company and putting power, putting
I've
outside.
already called up 10
Okay.
companies that are available. They can get it to us within 24 hours.
Okay.
We're looking at these, generators, heat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the only problem that I have, that on election day, we're supposed to have rain, serious rain. So we're looking at what we can do, some
Okay.
temporary sites.
So we are putting every single thing on the.
Everything is on the table right
Okay.
now.
All right.
Yeah.
Because it honestly, depending on how this plays out over the next few days, with the news rolling out and everything, that might have to be a possibility.
And, we have used tents before. We did it up north, so, it's something that we have.
So we have familiarity with that. Okay.
We do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and I understand it is so complicated, because then we have the equipment that we have to,
Well, we may go back to a paper
transport.
base. Luckily, we have ballots,
good,
okay? This is something we need to sit down and work out.
okay.
Other items I'd like to let the board members know that our warehouse is doing an incredible job, testing every piece of equipment. The test deck and our pre-lat, I said this before, our logic and accuracy tests on the equipment usually in the past took about 5 to 10 minutes to complete the precinct. With all the materials that we have now, testing everything that we have, we're looking at almost a half hour per precinct. They're working from 8 to 10, 8 to 11 at the warehouse, so they're doing an outstanding job. We think we will make it on time to get everything completed to be delivered. But the problem is, we've already delivered cans, and we have to pick those up for people refusing. So, it's something that we're working on. Charles?
And I spoke with Derek at the warehouse late last night, and he says late Friday or Saturday, those cans that are being accepted will be out of the warehouse and with the cartridge. So we were anticipating Thursday, the 12th, with the new procedures, and that procedures, now that the e-poll book is activating cards, it has to be pre-latted touch screen and everything, and it takes a little longer. In the past, there was a card activator and the e-poll book was pre-loaded on its arm, but that's what the holdup is. And working through this, they're trying to see for November a better procedure and what they can do to help speed that process up.
Now, the refused cans, when are we picking those up? Are they coming back to the warehouse, or are they staying where they are until we relocate?
They're staying where they are until we relocate. Also that, as Charles said, the trucking companies are looking for additional trucks because that's a late date, Friday, Saturday to get them out. We're right up against the brick wall right now, so they have 2 days to deliver. The day befores are usually 300 to 400, and this is going to be real tight. I just want to let everybody know. But I believe in folks that we have working. They've called around to. I've got calls from trucking companies saying, "Is that true?" And I said, "Yes, it is. Deal with the person that called you. We'll get it out." So this is something we have never run up before. Luckily, we've had plans. We didn't think we'd have to use these contingency plans like this. But everything that could happen has happened, just to let you know. And another item is that it is a need for us to have our own pool of part-time workers here at this office. Going to an agency, they cannot supply all the bodies that we need. So after this election, we'll be working on that also.
Okay, well, yeah, we could discuss that after
We will take care of that after this election.
Mr. Holliday?
Morning, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners. As mentioned about the 21 polling
I'm
places.
sorry, I have one question before we go. Well, you about to go on toilet place. Let me ask one question we brought up, and maybe it's a question for Barbara, for Jim. When we move a polling place, remind me what we have to do in terms of public notice and all those kind of things.
We have to publish, we're supposed to be publishing in the newspaper. We'll do a mailing, but at this time it may be too late. So what we're gonna do is go to where the old place was, put up signs and inform them that it's moved to a different location. If we have emails on people in those precincts, we'll let them know by email.
Okay, and that's that, and the mailing and all that are statutorily required in terms of moving, what do you have to do when you move a polling place?
Well, we're supposed to notify the public.
I got
That's
it.
what we
Okay.
do.
So I guess the question I'm asking is there a, in light of this next week, is there, next week, is there a cutoff? Are you projecting a date when you're saying, okay, well, this is when we have to be status quo, or are you looking to go all the way up until?
We're going all the way up until the day before election. We have to.
No, I get it, Lance. Let me be clear. I'm not asking the question about operational logistically, I'm asking the question legally, right? So I'm just asking the question of what impact this has relative to whatever the statutory requirements are like, so I can understand how all this fits together.
Well,
That's
we had Adam and Jim Nally went to meet with the presiding judge
Okay.
and let her know what's going on and the extraordinary things that we may need to get some court orders, so the court is aware of that
Okay.
also.
All right, that's
I just want to let
core,
you know that.
so you understand, it's not a question for me when I'm asking this question, it's about logistics, I understand those have to play out, but they do have impact on the, because of what we're doing.
Legally, I
So just trying to understand
Yeah,
that
but
side.
we have checked, we are going to be dealing with the courts on this also.
Okay.
Ms. Goodman?
There's a provision that does not permit, oh, I'm sorry. There's a provision that doesn't permit changing polling places without that satisfactory notice.
Okay.
And I think that's why Mr. Goff is referencing the fact that we're gonna need some court relief on that. Because otherwise, we're not supposed to do it.
Right, got it, okay.
Good, okay.
So of those 21 polling places, that impacts 105 judges, which the Judges Department is looking to reassign. At this time, we have 11,685 judges trained. There's 12 training classes left. 2,067 election coordinators have been assigned. There are no classes remaining. As of today, we have voted 53,815 voters. As Lance mentioned, of that, 1,070 were the pretrial detainees. $1,570 that were voted over the weekend. As mentioned, Lance, myself, and Jim, on Sunday, we conference call the city about the state of where we're at now, and then yesterday, Jim and I had another call, and I'll allow Jim to expound on that call. And as of today, we have 142,906 vote by mail applicants, and 1,536 for the recovered voters. The warehouse is still getting the cans out. All the other departments are working very diligently, and hats off to them for what they're doing to keep our process going in spite of the virus that's going on, and we have taken precautions for that as well. Our human resource daily is getting updated data, and she's making that available to all the staff.
May I add something? And just to let you know, I checked, we're gonna have a deep cleaning at this office before we start bringing everybody in for election day.
Oh, that's wonderful. Good.
After I presume.
Huh?
After. Oh, one for the record.
Yeah. Well, let me get the first part done first, I'll do the second later.
One quick question, again, on law. Would we still be allowed to keep open a super site on election day? Is that?
We do. We already do.
We already do.
I'll
We
mention.
do that already.
Okay.
191.
Right. Okay.
The difficulty with the law as it currently sets forth is that the conditions that we want to change polling places are not in the code.
Right.
So you change polling places when you have, without appropriate notice, when there's a fire, flood, or total loss of heat. And so that's, I think, what's creating the challenge. Otherwise, any exigent circumstance, we could otherwise change polling places without notice.
Although,
So that's the difficulty, I think, with the way the code is currently written.
but the state of emergency designation may help.
I can
Yeah,
only
right.
assume it will,
Yeah.
right,
Oh,
right.
yeah, right.
So, I'm just, spitballing here. So we could also change the super site, if necessary, to a super duper site.
Yes, you can, but then the CDC says you don't want to put too many people in one location. So we have to look at this most reasonable, most logical, and the safest.
Well,
for
then we
everybody.
already have 100 touch screens at that site.
Yeah.
I
I
just
don't think we could
Yeah.
put any more.
And right now, to do another super site could be done, but you're gonna take resources from to get the election off, what we're doing right now. I cannot have the warehouse stopped. The procedures, right, I just can't.
How, so I guess so we always have that super site open. Are we going to advertise and
We'll talk
publicize?
about- Yeah, we're working
little
on
more?
that, we're working on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Holliday. Mr. Allen?
Good morning. So as Mr. Holliday referenced, we've been in steady meetings since last Thursday with the Office of Emergency Management and Communications. Some of that has involved the city expressing their commitment to any budgetary needs that we might need, specifically with cartage if we're having to make all these last-minute moves of our election supplies, as well as we've expressed a commitment to try to get us as many city employees paid day off to be standby judges. We don't know how many yet, but we are working on a video project to provide a new training mechanism, because we don't have time between now and Election Day to train these individuals. We also don't want to throw them into a situation where they're going to be frustrated with, how do I activate a voter card, how do I issue a ballot, how do I close the polls. So we're working with a video company that's coming in to tape one of the classes, and then to work with community services to develop 4 critical areas: opening the polls, processing the voters, dealing with different situations, and closing the polls, so that we can have online by hopefully Sunday training materials if and when we're using these. We're also working with community services on the possibility, and there are some difficulties with this, of encouraging the mikvah program participants to consider bringing someone with them, a smart friend with them. There are permission slip issues. There are, so that brings the parent getting involved, as well as working with mikvah to try to get the parents to go online. But we're looking at all kinds of different staffing provisions right now because of some of the calls that we're getting from our election judges. We have been promoting heavily vote by mail and early voting. To that end, we're definitely going to break a presidential primary record, and we're on the verge of breaking the all-time record as far as applications to vote by mail. We've received a number of thank yous and kudos from voters who have found the application system very easy, or who noticed it for the first time in the mailing that this was an option, and they took advantage of it. We've had a number of people comment on Twitter in particular that this was so easy, they did it in 2 minutes. So that's been moving along. We only wish that it had moved along a lot sooner in the process, because now we're running up against Thursday is 5 p.m. and we're trying to emphasize that on all social media and with the news media, that Thursday at 5 p.m. that application has to be at the board for us to be able to process that. And we're urging people to apply sooner if they can, so that there's enough time for us to be able to fulfill that request and for them to receive it and return the ballot.
And that Thursday, 5 p.m., that's a statutory deadline?
That is a statutory deadline.
So we can't change that. That's not like an administration thing on our part. That's the law.
No, that would require some kind of judicial action or something like that. And I don't know that there is a lot of time to continue fulfilling all the way through the weekend. They'll be receiving their ballots after Election Day. So Thursday is a good hard date to cut that off.
And likewise, the deadline for the receipt or the mailing of the ballot is also statutory.
The mailing of the ballot must happen. It must be postmarked, or at least now we've got more automation in the design of our envelopes. We're using intelligent mail barcodes that relate to each individual voter's envelope, so that not only can the voter track it, but we're also going to be able to track the first piece of equipment that return envelope passes through at the Postal Service. So whether they're mailing it back from Florida, California, or here in Chicago, we now have a smaller envelope, which increases the automation and increases the percentage that will be picked up in every machine.
Yep.
Jim, I have two questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
First question is, I know you sent out a communique to political editors, I think I saw that, talking about encouraging people to early vote. How was that? Was that carried? Was that picked up by folks, or was that effective? And what do we need to, if it was not, what do we need to do more to make sure that message does get out?
So it's been somewhat effective, but the more that we can tie the message to the story that they want to carry right now, and they want to carry the coronavirus story, the more they're likely to pay attention to it. Those are the interviews that are happening most often. Those are the interview requests that we're getting. They want to talk about the election in relation to that, as opposed to just talking about the election. So we're dancing on the head of a pin, because with this declaration of an emergency, it's an operational declaration that the governor and the mayor and the county board president are making, so that it frees up the ability to reallocate human resources as well as financial resources, as well as to be able to make purchases, so that they can respond and also do things like testing more thoroughly and in a more timely basis, and try to stay ahead of this situation as best as possible. And to that end, the Chicago Department of Public Health has been head and shoulders above most other agencies around the country. But still, that declaration has created a perception that there's a full-blown outbreak, when in fact the risk remains low. So
in other words, what you're saying is that there's a balancing act here that we have to walk to make sure that, yes, we encourage people to vote by mail, but by doing what you're saying and linking that could have other ancillary effects in other parts of our operation. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
yes, but to your point, we are going to have a news conference later this week. We were going to have one at the ABA, but that's called off, at the American Bar Association, to urge people to use early voting now, because there are going to be issues, significant issues on election day. So we have to try to get as many of those ballots in the bank, if you will, and urge people who've got their minds made up to come to our early voting sites and to follow the Centers for Disease Control recommendations. You know, vote and wash your hands early and often.
So it's the one thing we should do, put it early enough. My next question is...
Vote once, I meant.
Well, exactly. My next question is, with respect to processing vote by mail ballots, I get the point about not trying to extend vote by mail applications ad infinitum, because you'll never catch up.
Mm-hmm.
But would there be some utility, in light of this press that we're trying to make, to try to go to court to ask a judge to say, hey, like the IRS, could we extend the vote by mail application until 9 or 10 o'clock or some later hour in that same day? Because I'm going to guess that once this comes out and you put out the call and people finally catch up because they're going to do it late, putting a 5 p.m. cap could be challenging. And maybe a court would say, well, we'll let you go to 9, we'll let you go to 10, and that may not impact the fulfillment. Just a thought.
I think the problem is it's statutory, and it's only the legislature that can change that. I don't think the court has the authority to change it. I think that's
We are relying, though, on the declaration of emergency, and as was referenced yesterday, Adam Lasker and his county counterpart, Jim Nally, both met with the judges basically to say, we don't know what extraordinary measures we are going to have to take, but we want you to be aware that we are expecting to have to take extraordinary measures. So
I think if the governor's office would make a declaration or something, I think that's what would be necessary.
Well, I'm only raising the issue based on what we just said with respect to polling places, because in that particular case, it involves going to. So if it's not possible, it's not possible. All I'm suggesting is that in all cases, a 5 p.m. deadline is tough, even if you didn't have the situation. So in this situation, I think it makes it even more challenging, especially if people are trying to
and
get
that's
access.
the problem, because if we extend that deadline, we still have that, it has to be sent out and then returned by March the 17th, by Tuesday. So we have that additional
But
challenge.
what we're doing is we're concentrating on having to do it online. If you do it online, if you give me an application at 5 o'clock, somebody's got to do data entry. And we're gonna have a lot of that, but if you do it online, it's instantly, I mean, it goes right into the system. So we're encouraging people to vote by mail, but to do it online, we get that application sooner. If you extend the hours, you know, what happens if I get with 10,000 applications? It's gonna take all night to do data entry? I mean, it's gonna be an issue. And then again, it's an issue about fulfilling all those ballots at the last minute.
And I have no problem with that. If it's not feasible, I understand these unique situations, but unique situations, I think force us to have to look at everything that, and see what's feasible to make sure that we encourage, that people have the right to have the ability to exercise in the safest space possible. That's the context of the conversation.
Right, and Commissioner, we are making sure that we can get this out to everybody, okay? We want to make sure everybody that's eligible to vote.
Yeah, and that's why I think a press conference sooner than later is so important, because you need to give people that advance notice to go out and do early voting. And if you're gonna vote by mail, you gotta do it now, not wait till Thursday.
Yeah.
You know, applying for vote by mail by Thursday at 5 o'clock is hard enough. Just send out the ballot, have the person receive it, fill it out, and then have it postmarked by Tuesday. It's you know, and we're working with a third party, the Postal Service, you know? We're totally dependent on them. So it is extremely, extremely difficult. That's why I'm saying a press conference as soon as possible, and stressing more early voting, you know?
Next up, normally we would wait to replace a polling site to contact the voter with the information about, okay, here's your new polling place. Because of the uncertainties involved, we are in the process of gathering the email addresses for all of the affected precincts, and we're going to be emailing information saying, we don't know at this time what your polling place is. Use early voting if you can. So that's going to be a shift. And then secondly, you are going to have to monitor chicagoelections.gov for your polling place and check in to find that on election day. We put our website hosting personnel on alert that they need to make sure that the system is alive and kicking at all times. They've been so on that it's led to alerts when even our own staff are attempting to update data. So that's been robust. Next, historically, the board has published not a legally required notice, but they've published an 8-page list of all the polling places. It's been of extremely questionable value.
Who's this?
Our board
Oh, okay.
has published on the Monday before Election Day an 8-page notice of election that had a listing of all the precinct polling places. The problem with that are several. The problems with it. First off, most voters don't know off the top of their head the ward and precinct number. Secondly, it's only people who are going to, be able to read that fine print. Thirdly, we have to produce that file the Thursday before the Monday, and now with all of these changes, we would be publishing definitely inaccurate information. We are getting rid of that, and we are replacing it with a full page or half-page ad in color that focuses on find your polling place at chicagoelections.gov. Not only is this going to be a little less expensive, but we're going to be able to publish in Mondays and Tuesdays papers and in more newspapers, especially in the Chinese, Spanish, and Polish newspapers. But we're also gonna go, instead of just with the Tribune, or just the Sun-Times, we're also gonna advertise in the Tribune as well.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that statutory?
The statutory one is the one that's required to, a certain number of days before Election Day, and that one was done. The board has always erred on the side of some polling places always changing. So we've always had this 8-page ad, but now if we try to do this 8-page ad, it will be guaranteed to be wrong the minute it hits the newsstand.
You mentioned, I just want to clarify, you may be considering this, but because of the way that you're using it, I just want to clarify. We're looking to do the Tribune and the Sun-Times with the ad for the find your polling place. Are we looking to place digital ads on those same sites so that they hit the big heading saying find your polling place?
Yes.
Okay.
Will the language of the ad point out that your polling place, due to the disaster declaration, and related issues, your polling place may have changed, just so people see that and they go, oh, I know where my polling place is, but instead we'll think, oh, I better check on that.
That wasn't the intent. We can look into modifying the language to include that. I have mixed feelings on that.
Well, and I'm also right now looking at chicagoelections.gov. Is there any chance, if we're going to be sending people to chicagoelections.gov, putting like big red and blue circles, vote by mail? I know we already have a little box, vote by mail, but vote by mail, early voting sites, and find your polling place, and so that when people go there, thing just jumps right out at them. I don't know if we can do it that quick.
I'll see what we can do.
Thank you.
Lastly, you mentioned the super site. The super site has, in recent years, always been open on Election Day and has been a fallback. We have not publicized that in the past because we did not want to have an unworkable crowd of people in the loop voting. So we want to emphasize as best as possible, if your polling place has not changed and your polling place is still where it was, vote there. But we will use the super site for voters who, for whatever reason, they can't get to that new site in their precinct, or if we have to move it to a neighboring precinct. But that will be a fallback on Election Day. It will be operational for any voter in the city of Chicago at Clark and Lane.
Good luck. I mean, I think the new location makes that kind of fallback a little more difficult, just because it's so high profile.
I know. Be careful what we wish for, right? We get a better high-profile site.
Great site.
Yeah, it is.
Though I hear McCormick Place is going to be empty.
We've actually looked at the possibility of trying to set up
We did
McCormick
look at
Place,
McCormick Place, and I did talk to MPEA.
but the logistics of, as Lance mentioned earlier, of trying to dedicate adequate equipment and then deal with issues related to staffing, parking. Our cartage are going to be very busy with any kind of last-minute moves that we have to make over this weekend.
Yeah, I think our shared concern is just a polling place on the far south side, and that, is no longer there. And where do we put it to make it accessible to the people in the neighborhood? If they have to, it's unrealistic for them to come all the way downtown or to McCormick Place. And I understand that's your challenge, and you're working as best you can to correct that and arrive at a solution, and I appreciate it, and thank you for all your efforts. The other thing I just wanted to mention in terms of media coverage, yesterday, for example, Channel 7 had great, we were like the second story behind the state of emergency. And Channel 7 has been terrific. I mean, we are always up there, the top story or the top two stories. I'm disappointed at the other, news media that they didn't even cover. And I really don't know what to do.
Well, I'm not disappointed so much. I think we're looking at an environment where newsrooms are no longer as large and robust as they used to be. So their focus on coronavirus right now is on the containment of the issue itself. I believe that they, like the public, are about to pivot significantly toward the intersection of this issue with the election next Tuesday.
Right, so the question is how do we, for this, exactly, for this upcoming press conference, how do we tell them, how important this, I mean, they should know.
Again, just spitballing ideas, run this one past my fellow commissioners and Jim. What if we offer to each of the television stations that on their morning news, they could get one of the commissioners to come on?
Well, yeah, I mean.
And then they would be able to use that clip throughout the day, tomorrow.
Well, I'll leave it up to you, Jim, to figure that out. I don't know, I think.
At this point, I think going back to what we discussed earlier with the news conference, I think that's going to be the biggest and most important move that we can make in terms of encouraging people to get out and use early voting now, to get online and apply to vote by mail, and to be prepared for changes on election day.
And especially if I think about it, Jim, to your earlier point about the pivot, I mean, once the elections today are over, the attention now then will turn to us next week, and so that'll happen Wednesday. So doing a press conference tomorrow morning would be probably the right time, because now all of the news attention going from Michigan, or focus on Michigan primarily now, will shift to us to see what's going on. So it might be a function just of hitting at the right time during the pivot.
I think that's very excellent.
Michigan, by the way, is, as well as this coronavirus emergency proclamation, are both going to affect us. Michigan, by way of, depending on how close it is, that will impact turnout here. It will either increase it or diminish it, but it will impact turnout here because perceptions about what happened in that neighboring state, which has so many similarities to ours, as well as many vacation homes for Illinoisans.
Right.
That's going to resonate with our voters. What happened there? It may make them less likely to vote. It may make them more likely to vote. So that is going to be an impact.
Or it'll shift the focus to the local races.
Yes, it will.
Anything else, Mr. Allen?
It's not like that's a lot, man. I mean, just a little bit, right?
Okay, thank you. I think we'll proceed to old business, which infrastructure projects, changes in election administration, electronic poll books, voting equipment. I think we've covered all of that. Legislation, is there anything?
Vote centers.
There is, by the way, more and more social media discussion as a result of this whole issue about mailing everybody their ballot.
Right.
Sometimes accompanied by curse words, and why in the world aren't we doing it already? So
I think this is
to the
perfect.
points raised earlier, there is a lot of political momentum, and we're seeing it even with our aldermen, who are saying, it's time. It's time that we should be mailing all of our voters their ballots. We've been, to the board's credit, you've been contemplating this in a strategic plan for at least a few years now, but there hasn't been the momentum prior to now.
And I think we have to take advantage of the momentum. Vote centers along with vote by mail.
You have to have both.
Right. I mean, it's
Yeah, Orange
perfect
County
though.
had both, everything
Colorado-
worked out well. LA County didn't have both, things didn't work out as well.
Right, Colorado
I mean,
is.
Colorado is, Utah, this is not a,
But we've learned from their mistakes.
Exactly, that's the beauty of it. We have that experience from other states, and we know what to do and what not to do.
And I also think, this is an aside, and once we get past all this, which we all will do successfully, we need to give contemplation to what other legislation needs to be adjusted. To your point about polling places, fire, flood, and no heat,
Right.
we need to think about public health emergency, adding that to the code to give us the flexibility to be able to make some determinations. Because my guess is, this could happen again,
Well,
potentially.
not only that, I totally agree with Commissioner Swain, but just updating the statute to reflect electronic mail at times.
Yeah, just a lot of things that would contemplate the need to move nimbly in situations where, but that's for another day, but just to echo what's
In
said.
other words, the election code really needs to be rewritten.
Oh my God, yes, it really needs to be
Away from tampering
updated.
children, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, okay. We have no new business. Do we have a legal report?
The only thing that I'm aware of that's still pending is that second congressional district candidate. It's now, it was remanded to the circuit court affirmed the state board. It's now in the appellate court. Yesterday, the last brief was due, as far as I know, and I don't think it's been set for any hearings.
And that, what's the name of that candidate?
Robin Kelly.
Robin Kelly, okay, thank you.
And throughout this process, she's been on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. We have no financial report. I did not receive any requests for public comment. There is no need for executive session today, so is there a
Well,
motion?
I just want to give an acknowledgement to the board that a frequent contributor that comes here that speaks on behalf of the Florida franchise was a candidate before here. Mark Lovelace passed away yesterday. And there are tributes all around with respect to his commitment to the LGBTQ community and his work on behalf of the Democratic electorate. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further business before the board, we will adjourn to March 17, 2020 at 7 a.m. For our meeting, and we will be posting the notice.
Or at the call of the chair,
Yeah,
Or-
because
in the event of
Yes,
circumstances.
definitely, thank you. Or I will call the chair. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.